जय हिंद दोस्तों, मैं हूं मेजर मोहम्मद अली शाह और मेरे को बहुत खुशी हो रही है क्योंकि मैं एक ऐसी इलस्ट्रियस पर्सनालिटी के साथ, शख्सियत के साथ भी गुफ्तगू में होऊंगा जो तारुफ की कोई मोहताज नहीं है दूर दूर तक. He needs no introduction at all. You all know him. You'll admire him. He is someone. Let me tell you one thing. My connection with him, it was one side that time because that time, of course, I had only read an article in 1996 on Manipur in the Outlook magazine. A brilliant article. Because my father at that time was commanding a brigade from Manipur. I showed it to my cousin. I was in a boarding school in Ooty, Lawrence School, Afdale. So I told my cousin, hey, read this. And वहां पे नीचे लिखा हुआ था in black, the author's name who wrote the article, Nitin Gokhale. Wow, yeah, brilliant, brilliant. और मैं थोड़ा बहुत समझता था मणिपुर के बारे में. Anyhow, as time went by, I got to know the same Nitin Gokhale. Thereafter, he worked with Telka, he worked with NDTV, he worked with Strat News. I mean, he's the founder of Strat News, and we'll talk more about his. He is regarded as a media entrepreneur. We will discuss that as well. And अच्छा, इसके बाद फिर 2005 में दिलचस्प बात ये है that when I was the ADC to the GOC at the SPECO in Dimapur in Nagaland, that time Mr. Nitin Gokhale had come over. He had met the GOC at that time, Lieutenant General Major Shah, जिनका मैं ADC रहा था. And I was always very enamored, very inspired, and I always looked up to Mr. Nitin Gokhale. Until I will tell you the date again, 7 December 2023 at Malik Shah Auditorium. It was Major Bob Khating lecture. The next day, we were having this dinner. So I asked Mr. Nitin Gokhale. उससे पहले भी actually क्लॉज का समिट हुआ था. सर, क्लॉज के समिट के टाइम पे भी मैं आपको बहुत करीब से देख रहा था उस टाइम पे. एंड आई हैव ऑलवेज बीन इन ऑ ऑफ यू सर. तो उसके बाद फिर मैं बड़े डर के पूछा, सर आपसे एक गुफ्तगू करनी है. हाँ, करेंगे. सर वाज वेरी ग्रेशियस, वेरी काइंड, वेरी एक्सट्रीमली हम्बल. जमीन से जुड़े हुए इंसान है. He straight away told me we'll do it. He promised me that time we'll do it. Well, as I say, if you manifest something, it happens. It might take time, but it happens. So today it's happening. And I can go on talking further and further about one of my favorite media personalities, but let's go on further on and speak to Mr. Nitin Gokhale. Sir, Jai Hind, and thank you very much for spending time, sir.
Jai Hind, Major Shah. Thank you very much for those such kind words, and I think I don't deserve all of them. But you've been kind and gracious. I certainly remember our meeting in Manekshaw Center for that dinner. And you really came across as someone who was deeply interested in military issues. And obviously, now I know why it is, because you come from a very illustrious Shah family. Your father retired as a Lieutenant General. Your uncle is the most renowned theatre and film personality, Mr. Nasiruddin Shah. And of course, I enjoy his acting, have enjoyed his acting. In fact, there's an article is written in the Indian Express today recalling Manthan, the movie of which he was part. And I remember seeing most of his movies with Shyam Benegal. So thank you very much for having me on your program.
Sir, thank you very much for spending time, sir. So let's first begin with आपकी journalism की journey तो बहुत inspiring है ही है वैसे भी. Magar, if you see in 1983, you had gone towards the east and you returned back to Delhi in 2006. And up east mein aap, Bengali, Assamese, Bangla, various languages. And apart from this, a lot of other dialects as well. Thode bahut. May not be fluent in other dialects, but aapko wahan ke bare mein malum hai. So first, before we start on your journey into journalism, I'm very intrigued to know about your experience about the northeast part of India, because Mr. Nitin Gokhale अगर नाम सुनेंगे तो सोचेंगे महाराष्ट्र है, मगर नॉर्थ ईस्ट के बारे में इतनी अच्छी जानकारी है. सर, tell me about your first brush with the northeast part of India, sir.
Well, the first brush goes back to 1971 really. एक बात बता दें कि मैं भी एक फौजी बेटा हूँ, एक फौजी का बेटा हूँ. Of course, my father passed away in 2020 at a ripe old age of 88. So he was in Bombay Sappers. I first went with him to Assam in 1971 as a 9-year-old, and we stayed in a place called Misa near Nagaon in Assam. In fact, the Misa cantonment, which is now a very important defense establishment in that area, was sort of built by my father and his colleagues that time, which was part of the initial op works and other things that were done that time. But when the war broke out, or the war was about to break out, in June 1971, I had to come back to my grandparents' place in Jalgaon, which is in Maharashtra, because we didn't have transport, the military transport, which is to take us to Nagaon, 3 hours, 1 hour away, 33 kilometers to our school. So for 6 months, I sat at home, and when the war broke out, I was away in Jalgaon, and that was my first brush with the Northeast. Then in 1979, my father was posted in a place called Lekhabali, which is now a divisional headquarters, which used to be a small one-horse town, near Murkongselek, the last railway station on the northern bank of Brahmaputra. So we used to go from separated family quarters in Dehu Road near Pune to Murkongselek during the summer vacations. And by now I was 17, 18. And we used to travel for 5 days, changing 3 trains, all of us, me, my mother, and 3 of us brothers. I was the eldest. I am the eldest. So that was the second brush. And then finally, after I graduated in 1983, my father's last posting was in Guwahati, in Narangi, the Narangi sub area. So where I had gone just to spend vacation, because I was to join the Air Force that year in June. But my result got delayed, and then I had to give another exam in December 83, CDS, the Combined Defense Service. So what do you do for 6 months? I stayed back, and there was a new newspaper starting. I had started, in fact, in April 1983, called the Sentinel. So I just walked into that newspaper after they had asked for some entrance test for hiring some trainee journalists, and joined them one day and stayed back because I liked the profession of journalism so much. I never went back to giving any other competitive exam or any such stuff. I was all of less than 21, in fact, at that point in time, and have ever since been a journalist. In fact, this month in 1983, I joined journalism, May 1983. That's been my brush with the Northeast in that sense. And I stayed there, like you said, up to 2006, which is 23 years, from 1983 to 2006, continuously based in Guwahati, but I have traveled all over the Northeast. In fact, I used to joke with a lot of my friends in the military, in the army especially, and the Assam Rifles, that I've been to places where none of you can dare to go or have a presence. And actually, that has happened in many cases in a place called, beyond Noklak in Nagaland, where there's an Assam Rifles post. I've been to Tripura a number of times, to Mizoram. I've been right up to, beyond Lunglei and Klabung, which is the tri-junction, and to Saiha and to Champai, and even the where the Mizo rebels were coming overground. So I mean, there is a flood of memories from the Northeast. But whatever I have managed to achieve in life is because of the base that the Northeast provided me. The people of the Northeast, my colleagues there, the experiences there. And then I came to Delhi in 2006 to join as NDTV's defense editor. And since then, I've been here for the last 18 years now.
Wow, that's very nice. इसलिए मैंने पहले ही नॉर्थ ईस्ट पार्ट ऑफ इंडिया से शुरू किया because the moment anybody mentioned northeast, आपको बताता हूँ एक बात, in Delhi, in the malls or the airport, the moment I see somebody from northeast part of India, मैं फीचर्स देख के पहचान लेता हूँ कि किस क्षेत्र से हैं, कौन सी ट्राइब से हैं और कौन सी सब ट्राइब से हैं, वो that detail. So I walk up to them, I ask, excuse me, where are you from? बहुत बुरा मान जाते हैं, why am I asking where am I from, why are you from, क्यों, why, what's the problem? No, they're not used to someone coming and saying. So they're like, from India itself? No, I understand that, but where? They're from the northeast part of India. Okay, I get that, but where? Oh, you will not be knowing. I go, no, tell me. So then they'll say, supposing they say Kohima, or they say Nagaland. So I'm like, oh, Kinika se, Bala se, Vishwala se na. And then we start talking straight away. And that's when they connect, when the moment और अगर मणिपुर से है तो बोलूंगा अरे आई नंगनुंगशे, and then straight away we get talking that.
No,
So मेरे
it's
को
the
बहुत मजा आया
language
वैसे.
is such a great connect. It's good to know as many languages as possible. Certainly.
Absolutely, sir, absolutely. So, sir, in 83 you graduated and that's the time. So, आप had you had आके आपके मज़हन में था that आप journalism cover करेंगे या आप journalist बनेंगे, because Air Force was which as you mentioned in June you were to join the you were give the CDS. So journalism, did it happen by default or is it was there apart from Air Force also on your mind?
No, it was completely by default an accident. And I'll tell you a story about why I stayed on, how I stayed on in journalism. I didn't realize that I was liking it so much. But I had an immediate boss that time, God bless his soul, is no longer alive, Ananda Dasgupta. So, interestingly, I joined as a trainee sports editor, a sports reporter. And I used to report on football matches. There used to be a big tournament in Guwahati called Gopinath Bordoloi Football Tournament, which a lot of top teams like Mohun Bagan, East Bengal, Ports Authority of Bangkok, all of these teams used to come. I was always a average sports person, but a very good observer of sports, cinema. I mean, I was curious. Basically, let me tell you why people say that I became a journalist by default and by accident. Is because I'm a very curious person. I still retain that curiosity. I like to learn new things every time it's possible. I used to even, read the old railway printed timetables, if you remember what those timetables were, because it gave me a glimpse of the names of railway stations, the number of railway, divisional railways that used to be there, Southwestern, South Central, Southeastern, all kinds of things. So I was interested in almost everything. So I joined and I made it very clear to the editor that by December I'm going to give this exam again, and my intention and my ambition or my aspiration is to become a commissioned officer. You will remember, and I must say this here, मैं आपको बताना चाहूँगा कि मेरे father एक JCO थे उस समय. He was a Subedar Major. He had got recruited in 1953, and by that time I was 20. He had become a Subedar Major. So for a Subedar Major or for a JCO that time, I'm talking about early 1980s, it was a very big thing to have a commissioned officer in the Indian Armed Forces. And they were very keen that I become that. So obviously that was at the back of my mind. But as I started writing, I started reporting, and then we started becoming part of the team that brought out this newspaper, 8-page newspaper, not much. But the routine was such that I used to leave home at 2 o'clock in the afternoon and come back home next morning at 4 o'clock after putting the newspaper to bed with my boss. So we became very close. Now, I jokingly say that had Kapil Dev's all-conquering cricket team in 1983 not won the Prudential Cricket World Cup, I would not have become a journalist. You might ask how. So let me tell you what happened was when they won, and obviously all of us were thrilled. We saw the live telecast in a neighbor's house. We didn't even have a television at home. But anyway, so after about 15 days or so of that euphoria, everywhere everyone was going overboard. They were felicitating the team all over the place. They were giving them gifts. They were getting flats and cars and whatnot. They were getting money. So it was getting little disgusting, if I may use a strong word. And like I said, I was not even 21 by that time. And it seemed to me very odd that this team is, instead of preparing for the West Indies team under Clive Lloyd coming to India to play 5 one-day matches from September onwards, is actually going and doing all this. So anyway, that I used to crib to my boss that this shouldn't happen. They should concentrate on playing and training. So he kept it at the back of his mind. Then on one lazy Sunday evening, we were in the office, and everything was non-functional, in the sense all the teleprinters, the news which used to come on teleprinters and the agencies, nothing was coming. Telecom links had got broken in Assam for some reason that day, that evening. So we were not able to fill up the pages of the newspaper because I used to do sports page, the last page, which used to go to bed with the first page. It's always like this, first page and last page together, and then the newspaper comes out like that. So it was already 10 o'clock, 10:30. I was not able to fill up the page. I went to the boss saying, what do I do? I've blown up the photographs larger than normal, but still there is a lot of space to be filled up. So second time when I went to him, he was anyway annoyed, irritated because he himself was struggling to put the paper together. So he said, "Don't bother me. You always keep talking about these small things. You keep criticizing the Indian cricket team. Why don't you write a piece? Why don't you write an article?" I'd never written an article in my life till then. Only the reports I had written. I'd never written an opinion piece. So I also got a little insulted, young blood, and I went fuming to my desk and I started writing in longhand. We didn't have typewriters. We had typewriters. I didn't know typing. So I wrote it in longhand, about 800 word piece. By about 1 o'clock at night, I finished it and I gave it to him very angrily. I said, "Here it is. You tell me whether it should go." So he corrected it and made some grammatical corrections and all that. And he said, "What is the headline?" So I said, "Are we going overboard?" Question mark. That was the title of the article. He said, "Okay, put this in the newspaper." So I put that. Next morning, my first byline, as we call it, appeared. What you see here, Nitin Gokhale, in July sometime in 1983. And of course, I was thrilled. My parents were also surprised that I can write as well. This was at night in those 2.5 hours or so. So anyway, I went back to the office as usual by routine around 2:33. He took me aside and said, "Let's go and have tea." He said, "Are you angry with me?" I said, "No, it's over. I mean, that time you were irritated, I was irritated. I'm not that kind of a person anyway." So he said, "What's your plan now?" I said, "Well, I'm here." He said, "No, no, I mean, in career, in life." I said, "You know it, that I'm going to, sort of leave in next March or so, or next May, once I get selected to CDS. My exams are in December." He kept quiet, smiled a little bit, and came back to the desk. And then he said, "Nitin, you're destined to be a good journalist. Don't bother to go and give this exam or anything. You take it from me, you will remain in journalism." I laughed at it. I said, "Don't sort of instigate me or don't provoke me, because my parents will not like it. They will be aghast." But as luck would have it, as destiny would have it, he left in October of 1983 because his father was ill in Calcutta. And he handed it over to me in a sense. He told the owner and the editor that this boy will look after the newspaper. You give him more responsibilities and do that. And by November or December, by the time I had to appear for the exam, I'd got so swamped by work, also thrilled by the work I was doing. The whole thing about, the outcome of your work comes out the next morning. And the thrill that so many people, that time maybe about 30,000 or 40,000 people used to read the Sentinel that time, to determine what people will read. And remember, those were the years when you had only radio and newspapers. You didn't have mobile phones, you didn't have WhatsApp, you didn't have YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, nothing. So I actually got completely sort of floored and taken away, taken completely to it like fish to water. And somewhere down the line in that period, I decided that there's no point giving any other exam. This is the career for me. Of course, my parents were aghast. They were crestfallen. My father didn't speak to me for almost a year or so. But I stuck to my guns, and here I am, being a journalist since then.
Wow. Wow, sir, wow. So, and while you were speaking, I was hearing you, one thing struck me, when you mentioned you wrote in longhand and you didn't know typing at that time. And now you play around with digital technology all over. You type, cut, be it on the phone, or on the laptop, or iPad, even cut. So when and how did that transition take place from the boy who did not know typing to the person that the Nitin Gokhale we know today, sir?
So when my journalism students now, or if somebody asks me how's been your journey in journalism, I said I can tell you in one line how the journey has been. So I'll tell you that and then explain it a little bit. So the journey from 1983 to now, I describe it in one sentence, and that is from telegram to telegram. I send news by the old Morse telegram. The Morse telegram, we used to sort of type it or write it and give it to the Post and Telegraph Department, the telegraph office, as they used to call it. and it used to take 12 hours that telegram to reach your destination. So we used to write 1,000 words, and how we used to write that telegram, people should know that if you're writing, say, dateline, Guwahati, Guwahati, comma, you can't put comma in symbol. So you have to write comma, COMA. Then say January 22, TWNTY, TWO, 22, colon, COLON. And after every 100 words, you say 100 in bracket. So that, the Morse code operator can actually put it in, and then that could be transmitted. So that was the telegram which used to take our news that time. Today you have an app of telegram on your mobile phone, which can transmit within 5 seconds any news that you want across the world. So that is the span of technology change that I've seen in my career. Of course, I started typing. I bought a portable brother typewriter in 1984, and I was then considered, in today's language, a dude, because we could carry that flashy red portable typewriter anywhere I went for assignment. I used to carry it everywhere. I actually paid a fortune for that. It was 3 times my monthly salary, the cost of the typewriter. But it was so. What I did was I started typing with one finger, and I still do. But I've written all my books now, 12 of them, on either typewriter or computers, with one finger typing, or maybe 2 finger typing. And here I am. It's all self-taught, self-made kind of a journey that I've had.
Wow, sir. Wow, that's so inspiring. So inspiring. So, and they say once if you've crossed the Brahmaputra, you go back there at least 7 times. They said that, And so, so after you came back to Delhi in 2006, and so how many times did you go back? I mean, do you have a count, or you may not have to be having a count at all?
After coming back, certainly I must have gone about a dozen times. Certainly, so I've crossed that 7 mythical 7 number. But like I said, so I stayed there in Sentinel for 7 years. I started covering other non-sports stuff also. And then, of course, militancy was at its peak in the Northeast that time in the 80s. So again, why I say, people ask me, how did you get into, sort of doing coverage for the military? Not because of my father's background, not because of my childhood, which was spent in the military cantonments and elsewhere, but because of my stint in the Northeast. Now, in those years, in the Northeast, you covered or reported only on the military or the militancy. So apart from what I said, like sports or municipal matters or whatever. So I started traveling to distant places. First time I went to Mizoram I was sent to Mizoram in 1984, January 1984. The Mizo insurgency was still on. It used to take 17 hours by road from Guwahati to Aizawl via Silchar. And again, I came across a very towering military personality there. Brigadier T. Silo was the chief minister.
Of course.
Of Mizoram.
Of course. Yes.
Of Mizoram. He was the chief minister.
Sorry.
No, he was the chief minister when I went there, and I was told to get his interview. So again, one anecdote there. So I was thin like reed, and I went there, and the PRO of the chief minister took me to him. He was a very senior, very serious man of military. Military man who had retired from the military and taken to politics. One of his famous stints as a commanding officer was as the commander of the Korea Brigade, the 190 Brigade in Tawang, which he had commanded elsewhere. And of course, when he saw me, he looked at me from top to bottom and said, yes, what's your name? So I told him. He said, what are you doing here? You seem to be a Maharashtrian. I said, yes, this is the background. He said, what do you know about Mizoram? So I said, very little, but I'm trying to find out. Whatever I know, I've read only in the newspapers or some books. So you want to interview me? I said, yes. He said, no. Then he turned to his PRO, again, a Silo. He's still my friend. He's now about 78, LR Silo, a legendary figure in Aizawl in the journalism and the Department of Public Relations of Government of
I know we're talking about.
Yeah. So he took me. He looked at him and said something in Mizo, and said, "You." So later he told me. He said, "You take him to the library, let him read books and history of Mizoram for the next 2 days. Then he can come back and interview me." So we had, in those years, we had so much time that I actually went back, stayed in Aizawl for 2 more days, read through whatever I could, and then I came back to interview him. So this was my first interview with a politician and with the chief minister. So this was in January 1984. So that's how gradually the journey started, from sports journalism to politics, then to militancy, then to covering the military. And in 1999, my most charismatic editor, the best editor that I worked under was Vinod Mehta of Outlook. He sent me to Kargil 25 years ago this summer. In fact, 10 days from now, say 2nd or 3rd June, I arrived in Leh to go and report on Kargil and stayed there for 45 days. All the way from the Northeast, he sent me there because I had done some work in the Northeast. So again, because of my work in the Northeast, he sent me there.
Wow. आपने सर 84 की बात करी और आपने तवांग की बात करी अलग से, तो आपको बता दूं कि उस टाइम मैंने अपनी नर्सरी स्कूलिंग तवांग के पास टांगा वैली है, खिरमू, गोम्पा, दैट एरिया, तो अपनी नर्सरी स्कूलिंग वहां से स्टार्ट करी मैंने टांगा वैली से. एंड द टाइम इन जनवरी 84 व्हेन यू वेंट टू इंटरव्यू ब्रिगेडियर साइलो, तभी मैं उस बच्चा था उस टाइम पे, नॉर्थ ईस्ट पार्ट ऑफ इंडिया में ही था, तब अरुणाचल प्रदेश में था मैं उस टाइम पे.
Right.
And of course that's one area of, I mean, one can never forget, one can never. बल्कि मणिपुर में तो आपको बोलते हैं होंगे मयंक, मणिपुर में आपको बोलते हैं मयंक. मयंक means someone from outside Manipur basically.
Outside, yeah, outside.
Okay. But they would have taken you on straight away, like as a friend, like बहुत लोग मेरे से पूछते हैं कि how do you mingle with so easily. हम लोग नहीं कर पाते यूनिवर्सिटी में यहाँ पे. If you have somebody from the northeast part of India, I said they're the most beautiful and the most affectionate, loving people you'll ever find. In fact, मेरे साथ तो बड़ी अच्छी दोस्ती है इनके साथ.
Exactly. No, I have my lifelong friends from the Northeast. Like I said, I've traveled all over, and simple people, very loyal to friendship, loyal to once they take you as their own, they are actually the best friends you can have anywhere. And that's been my experience. So I went to Tawang for the first time in 1986 when Operation Checkerboard started, Sundarang-Chu incident. They tried to go to Bumla and to Sundarang-Chu, couldn't go because there were no roads and we were not allowed. But that's how the reporting on the military started, and of course the militancy came. The Operation Bajrang started in Assam in 1990. By that time I had started another newspaper as perhaps one of the youngest editors of a newspaper in the country. At 28, I became the executive editor of Northeast Times in 1990. And we broke the story of the Alpha insurgency and ransom and extortion that was happening. The Prafulla Kumar Mahanta government actually fell that time, and we were partly responsible for it, for those reports. He also, in fact, Mr. Mahanta keeps mentioning it all the time, that you did that one report which was very damaging and then we suffered for it. But he's a good friend now. And so many other memories one can tell you, but that is where Northeast is.
If I'm not mistaken, sir, because a little bird had told me that there was an incident where the undergrounds in Northeast had taken you captive for some time, and you had an experience over there. वो anecdote बताना चाहेंगे आप हमारे साथ, sir?
Yeah, बिल्कुल. वो मतलब, see, I can't call it kidnapping really, but it was a detention. So this was in Tripura, if I remember correctly, in 1999 or 2000. Khowai is a subdivision near Agartala, and there was NLFT and ATTF. There were two militant organizations which were active that time. They were rampant, in fact, in killing non-tribals and otherwise. By the time I was in Outlook, I had already done about 18, 19 years in journalism. So there was a massacre of non-tribals, Bengalis, in Khowai. One of the months, I don't remember which one now. And so the news came, it flashed. So luckily that afternoon there was a flight to Agartala, from Guwahati. So I took that flight to Agartala. And next morning, I sort of hired a local photographer who knew the language, Kokborok, and he was a half tribal, half Bengali. His mother was a tribal, his father was a Bengali. So he and me went right up to the place where the massacre had taken place the previous day. and some 45 non-tribals or Bengalis were massacred, women, children, men, everyone. So they were all in a school, in a temporary relief camp. So we went there, we talked to them, we went around the area, understood what was happening. So while we were coming back, we were stopped. Our car was stopped suddenly by arm-wielding youngsters, and we were in a Maruti van that time. So that eight-seater Maruti van, which you could face, the back seats face each other, three people each, like that. So they got into it forcibly, and we realized that something's wrong. So they made us sit on the floor of the car, blindfolded us, and the car started off. They said something in their own language, and the driver was terrified, but he was directed to drive fast. So for hour and a half, we kept driving, and we didn't know where we were going. It was a bumpy road, some kacha road. We went there, and they sort of took us. They didn't tie us down or anything, just blindfolded us, and they took us to a hut. I mean, a cluster of huts, but we were taken into a hut off of water, and then they started questioning. So they said, so I said, I'm so and so. He said, who are you? Why are you here? Why are you both here? So he said that I'm a photographer. So he said, who's he? So I told them that I am the reporter from Outlook. So they wouldn't believe it. They said, no, you are from military intelligence or some police organization, IB or whatever, and we can't allow this. So I said, no, I'm not. This is my identity card. This is my card. So they said, no, we don't believe it. It can be made by anybody. I perhaps looked much younger that time, and I was much thinner. Perhaps I had, this crew cut is always my haircut. I've always sported that. So that was going against me, and they wouldn't listen. But then so they said, we will confirm this. We will check this, your identity. So now my problem was that I couldn't tell them my wife's number because she would panic, and she was in Guwahati if they called. And my topmost boss was Vinod Mehta of Outlook, as I said, and he was a renowned typical absent-minded professor. So I said, if I give his number, there were no mobile. I mean, the mobiles had just come, but I didn't think that he carried the mobile all the time. And there was all the chance that if somebody called him and said, do you know Nitin Gokhale, he would say, who? So he was that kind of, bulakkad kind of a man, but a brilliant editor. So I gave my immediate boss Ajit Pillai's number and contact and a couple of others, and I said, you check with them. And you see my name in the newspaper or the magazine, you will know. So they said, no, but we have to go back to Agartala and check because there's no phone around here. So you'll have to be here, detained in this place. So their leader or their deputy leader went to wherever they went, and we stayed that night in that hut, surrounded by these boys. Of course, we were given food, rice and simple dal and some machli, all that. Then they came back, and my only fear was this fellow, my photographer, was talking to them constantly, telling them in their own language that we are not, from the government or from the intelligence agencies. We are journalists, but they won't listen. Now, all of them were carrying guns in their hands, guns, pistols, whatever, assortment of weapons, and they were loaded. They were in the early 20s to mid 20s, and we were sitting on the floor of the hut, and they were all surrounding us. My only fear that time, believe me, even so many years later, I recall that, was that if one of them decides to bump us off for publicity's sake, then we are dead for no reason. Yeah. So that was my fear. So I kept them engaged, kept talking to them since I knew Bangla. They also understood Bangla. So I kept talking in broken Hindi. I mean, for them, broken Hindi and Bangla, like that. But anyway, they just let us be. They didn't beat us up or anything. I mean, I must confess that. So it took them 24 hours to come back because probably they were evading police. I don't know what happened. But they came back and profusely apologized that we made a mistake. We thought nobody can come so quickly. No journalist comes so quickly to a place when this is happening. And therefore, we were suspicious. So now we know who you are and we are sorry. So they offered us the gamacha, as a matter of respect, and sort of let us go. I mean, they sort of dropped us to a place. We had the car, of course, but they escorted us outside. and we came back. But it was scary when it lasted. Now I can tell you matter of fact, the entire incident in a matter of fact way. But certainly it was scary. But one has overcome those things.
Absolutely, sir. What my experience in Nagaland, where we were
That's right.
captured by the
Yes.
insurgents.
You
And
were also,
again,
picked up. Yeah.
hats off to them. They didn't disrespect us. They're very respectful. Even at the time when we got execution orders to execute us, even then, sir, please, sir. I'm very sorry, sir. You all are good people, sir. In broken English, you were speaking. But my
Yeah.
commanders asked me to shoot you all. What can I do? Please cooperate
Yeah.
with me, sir. It will only take 2 minutes, sir.
My God. No, we didn't go to that stage. We didn't go to that stage, certainly. But yes, these things do happen. Used to happen in those places. I'm not saying they don't happen now, but that was my experience.
So in the early 80s, I remember there used to be a very senior officer called General Kukreti. He was Brigadier Kukreti at that time. He was the IG of the Assam Rifles. Very famous
Right.
there. In fact,
Yes.
my father was his brigade major in Chakabama in Nagaland in the
Absolutely.
late 70s, early 80s, at that
Right.
time.
Absolutely. Very famous man. In fact, he
Very.
did that famous operation in Oinam,
Yes, yes, yes,
in
yes.
in Manipur, in the Naga hills of Manipur,
Correct, sir.
Tangkhul area. So we are aware of that name. I mean, some people will say infamous name, some would say very famous name, but
Correct.
yes, he was a towering personality again, very dominant personality.
करेक्ट सर सर हमारे जो किस्से हैं जो नॉर्थ ईस्ट के खास तौर से अब आप मिल गए तो जो रास्ता बन गया है ना वो कभी खत्म नहीं होगा लेट मी आस्क यू सर हाउ डिड यू गेट इनटू हाउ डिड यू स्टार्ट योर ओन वेंचर लाइक Strat News and how did you become the founder of your own and you basically a media entrepreneur वो तब्दीली कैसे हुई सर
ये जर्नी ये तब्दीली ऐसे हुई कि मैं दिल्ली जब आया तो नॉर्थ ईस्ट से दिल्ली जब आया तो एनडीटीवी के लिए आया तो एनडीटीवी ने मुझे बहुत मौका दिया आई बिकेम देयर डिफेंस एडिटर I used to travel with the prime minister and go abroad. So I used to do multiple things. I was looking at, reporting on military affairs mostly, but intelligence agencies also, MHA, sometimes PMO, because we traveled with the prime minister that time, Dr. Manmohan Singh. They used to carry journalists in their plane, the prime minister's plane in those years. So we did all that. I did the Elam War 4 in Sri Lanka from 2006 and 2009, covered that war for NDTV. Another great experience. But by the time 2014 came, I had done about 32 years of daily, day-to-day reporting. I was not getting old. I was getting bored, really. Because by the time television by 2014 had become a little redundant in the sense it was mainly based on 1 or 2 minutes of bites, bite collection as it is called. There was no space or less and less space for analysis or ground reports. The NDTV or the entire television industry had got into a very serious financial trouble because of the economic crisis in 2008. So the news gathering budgets had shrunk. And all the charm that was there when I switched at a ripe old age of 44 from print to television. I had not done television till then. When I shifted to that medium, it took me some time to adjust and took me some time to understand the nuances of that medium. But then, of course, they gave me lots of opportunities, and it was a step up. A lot of people knew me from the Northeast, so they knew my name, but they didn't know my face. For instance, I knew many military officers when I said I'm so and so. I said, "Oh, you're from Northeast," like that. General Pathankar, for instance, who was in 15 Corps in 2002 when I went there from the Northeast. Yes, 17 Parafield. His son was in NDTV that time.
NDTV as well. There's the travel programs with the roads.
That's right. He does the car and the automobile programs. So he remembers me from the Northeast. Many people remember me from the Northeast, not so much from NDTV, but NDTV gave me a higher profile. So this was 2014. So I was at a crossroad and thinking that I've done, everything that was needed to be done. I've done print, I've done television, and the web was still to come. Internet had not become that. Internet as a base for news had not become that popular. So I wanted to, now not work under anybody. By the time I'd become senior, I was already, by 2014, I was already 52. And I said, I can't continue with that same pace that I used to do in the earlier years, go to distant places and do all the hard work in the field. So I must do something else, a little more substantial. So in 2014, I quit NDTV in November 2014, in fact. And then for about 7-8 months, I was mulling over what were the various options. I wanted to write books. By the time I had started writing books, I had written by that time the book on Siachen, the Beyond NJ 9842, the Siachen Saga, which is still a bestseller 10 years later. It's published in April 2014. So I thought, book writing is a good profession, and I thought I can tell a good story, and I still do, because I've done now 12 books since 1998. My first book was in 1998 on the Assam insurgency, tea industry and Assam insurgency. So I was mulling over various options. And then a lot of my friends in the defense industry and defense sector said that, we don't have a voice for the Indian defense industry, small scale or otherwise. Everything is about MNCs, the multinational companies, the original equipment manufacturers, foreign ones. But we need a platform for Indian companies. We need to do something. So I said, certainly I'm willing to do it, but I don't have money. So a couple of them said, we will give you support for a year. You want to try? I said, okay, let's try. So we launched Bharat Shakti website, bharatshakti.in, in November 2015. And just as a complete experiment. So we started with 3 people. And of course, it clicked because we were ahead of the curve in a way, because Make in India became a buzzword. The policies changed in procurement, in acquisition, in focusing on the Indian defense industry. Self-reliance in defense became the mantra. But we were about a year ahead of all this, because one had sort of worked with this. So then in 2020, we thought that there is again lack of Indian platform which speaks on foreign policy and international issues from an Indian perspective. So we started Strat News Global, Strategic News Global, which started in January 2020 with an interview with the Dalai Lama, in fact, on 6th of January 2020. And as luck would have it, as I jokingly say again to people, that China and Corona helped us, because the China crisis in Ladakh started just 2 months or 3 months after we started Strat News Global. Since I had traveled to Ladakh, now Ladakh is the second most traveled area for me as a journalist. Northeast remains the topmost or the highest travel. Next is Ladakh because of Kargil, in 45 days of Kargil in 1999. Later Siachen, later Eastern Ladakh. General Y.K. Joshi, who was Northern Army commander in 2020 and 2022, was a brigade commander when I traveled the entire stretch of in Tangse. He was a brigade commander. When I traveled the entire stretch of Eastern Ladakh with one of his battalion commanders in the height of winter in the last week of January 2010. So I had by that time got the idea of the layout there on the ground. Where is Chushul? Where is Dumti? Where is Demchok? Where is DBO? Where is Galwan?
Just for our viewers to know, General Y.K. Joshi, who we mentioned about, he was the commanding officer of the brave Amar Captain Vikram Batra Paramveer Chakra, just for people to understand. Yes, sir,
absolutely.
please.
So just to give you another input to it, I just took him to Kargil, into Dras, to recall those days. So you will see that documentary coming up in July, where we are recalling Kargil, revisiting me as a journalist and them as veterans who led the battle 25 years later. So I have known him since then, since Kargil days. So anyway, so Strat News Global was started in 2020. We got a traction. We got some standing. People came to us. We had a good team, which was handpicked by me with expertise and experience. And here we are. And then we started in 2023. We think that space is the new frontier. So therefore, I have started a third website and a YouTube channel called Interstellar, interstellar.news. which is
I'm aware, sir.
purely
Well aware. I'm one
we
of your
are,
subscribers, in fact.
thank
It's
you. So we are purely focused on space and beyond in that, on technology and otherwise. So that's been the journey, and been from three people in 2015, November 2015. In 2024, we are now nearly 29 people in these 9 years.
wow.
God has been kind. People have been very
That's,
supportive, and
that's
we've got some traction. That's the journey.
So that is so inspiring. In fact, आपने जिक्र किया था 80s में ना, in the Prime Minister's aircraft, earlier the journalists could go and such things. Similarly, I
Right.
saw Amitabh Revi traveling flying with the DG
Absolutely. The DGSM
Assam rifles in
rifles.
his aircraft
Yes.
when he interviewed him. And yes, sir, that's right. General Pradeep Nath interview. Brilliant interview that was. And was, सर इतना मजा आया ना आपके साथ गुफ्तगू करके, वाकई में मतलब मेरे को क्या बताऊं मैं आपको, आई हैव रियली, मतलब खास तौर से मेरे दिल के बहुत करीब है नॉर्थ ईस्ट पार्ट ऑफ इंडिया. जैसे ही में राब्ता होता है ना, I can just go on and go on and on and on. I mean,
No, we'll do it. We'll do that offline. I think people have lots of work to do online. They may not have the time or patience to go through what we are saying, but certainly we'll catch up offline and share stories, and look at what we did or experiences that we had in the Northeast.
Absolutely, sir. आपने बोला ना पैंडेमिक हेल्प यू. सो मैंने फौज में हम एक सेइंग थी, व्हेन द गोइंग गेट्स टफ द टफ गेट गोइंग. जब हम
Absolutely.
एकेडमी में थे, जब वहां भूत बना था ट्रेनिंग करते करते, तब ये था व्हेन द गोइंग गेट्स टफ द टफ रिपोर्ट सिक. फिर
That's true.
पैंडेमिक में मैं नया चीज कॉइन करी, व्हेन द गोइंग गेट्स टफ द टफ गेट्स ऑनलाइन. और इस तरीके से
Absolutely.
यू हैव कम ऑनलाइन. Sir, I sincerely thank you. From the
Pleasure.
bottom of my heart, for sparing time, sir. And before we part ways, I hope your website, your YouTube channel, and your Strat New. I'm a huge follower and huge avid fan of the work that you and your company, the 29 members of yours, are doing. All of you, in fact, Nilanjana helped me coordinate it. I sincerely thank her as well, sir. Before we part ways, any last message from your end you would like to throw out to people who want to venture into journalism?
Well, I was lucky again. I always say that luck plays a major part in your life's journey. So I was lucky to meet one very renowned and respected journalist that time, M.V. Kamath, who was the editor of Illustrated Weekly of India. And in 1984, early 1984, I met him. He was in Guwahati. So he had already spent about 37, 38 years in journalism by that time. So I said, sir, how do you, do this? Because it's such a thankless profession, underpaid, overworked. I don't know whether I'll last. That early doubts as a youngster. So he said, I don't know how I've survived, but I've always enjoyed every moment of it so far. I said, how do you do it? What is the mantra of success? So he said, my guru gave me a mantra, Vishwanath. Saranand, his editor in Free Press Journal. There used to be a newspaper called Free Press Journal. So Saranand was his editor. He said he gave me 3 mantras which I am following. I said, please give me also. It's like, the sure shot way to success, I thought that time. And surely, when I look back, and if you come to my office, it is inscribed in a frame. I framed it actually, what he said, with his photograph. So he said, first thing he said as a journalist, what do you need to do? Or maybe in life also, but at least as a journalist, do serious work, but never take yourself seriously. A very profound line, which I understood as I went along, as I sort of started gaining experience. He explained to me what it meant, and you can decipher, your viewers can decipher what I'm saying. Number 2, he said, you're as good as your last byline. That means what you have done yesterday, what you have written yesterday, you're as good as that. Don't talk about what you did 25 years ago or 20 years ago. I wouldn't, what I spoke to you today, I wouldn't speak in the normal course, because I'm always focused on what's happening today and looking ahead. But this was his mantra, that you're as good as your last byline. What you wrote, what was your last work? That will tell people what you are, and not what you did 20 years ago. And the third and the most important thing, why people tend to trust me and believe in me, stems from what Mr. Kamath said that time, the last mantra. He said, it is more important what you don't write than what you write. So again, I didn't understand as a 20-year-old or 21-year-old So he said, a lot of people will confide in you, a lot of people will give you their secrets, or in a moment of weakness, they will say that. Use your discretion. Don't use everything to write. If you do that, people will trust you in the long term, because long term is your aim, and not short term fame. And I followed that mantra subconsciously. It's written in my brain here, wired in my brain, and that's the mantra for success. I thought for myself. That's something that maybe anybody can emulate. It's a simple mantra, but a very, very profound way of life, really.
Wow. So what a profound saying. Long term is my aim, not short term fame. So how brilliantly said. And so
Yeah.
on that note, I sincerely thank you. I'm feeling very, very guilty for holding you on for this long. I wasn't expecting. I thought नहीं सर मैं इतना लंबा नहीं हो लूंगा मगर मजा आ गया सर इतना मजा आया I
कोई बात
can't
नहीं.
even tell you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, Major
Sir,
Shah. Thank you
thank
very
you,
much for having me. Jai Hind. Jai Hind.
sir. Sir, I'll
Thank
just
you.
end the broadcast, sir.
Thank you.
I'm just going off